I lost everything in 1 year. Then a stranger I helped on the street showed up at my door and changed my life forever. The night I helped him, I had exactly $11 in my account, a garbage bag of clothes in the back of a car I was about to lose, and a diagnosis I hadn't told anyone about yet. I wasn't in a position to help anyone. I helped him anyway, because he was on the ground and it was raining, and there was nobody else. I didn't think about it again for 3 months. Then he found me. And what he said when I opened the door is something I still have trouble putting into words, even now. My name is Marcus. I'm 41 now. This story starts when I was 38, which was the year I learned that life doesn't take things from you one at a time. It takes them in clusters, like it's been saving up. January. My position at the architecture firm where I'd worked for 11 years was eliminated in a restructure. Not performance related, they told me, which is something companies say when they want you to feel better, and it doesn't work. 11 years. I designed 3 buildings in that city that were still standing, that people walk past every day without knowing my name, and I was handed a box and a severance package and a handshake from a man who'd been at the firm for 8 months. April. My landlord sold the building I'd lived in for 6 years. The new owners converted it to short-term rentals. I had 60 days. I looked at what apartments cost in Seattle and looked at my severance and did the math, and the math was not good. July. I went to the doctor about a pain in my side that had been there for a while and that I've been ignoring in the way that men ignore things, with determination and complete irrationality. It wasn't serious in the end, but the process of finding out it wasn't serious involved 3 months of tests and a word that I'm not going to write here because just seeing it in text does something to me, even now that I know how it resolved. 3 months of not knowing. That is its own particular kind of weight. By August, I was living out of my car, not dramatically. Not the movie version, where someone is broken and weeping in a parking lot. The mundane version, which is somehow harder to explain. I had a gym membership that gave me access to a shower. I had a storage unit for what wouldn't fit in the car. I had a laptop and a library card and a freelance architecture project that paid just enough to keep the car running and the storage unit current. I was functioning. I was also, in a very real way, at the bottom of something I didn't have a name for yet. I told nobody. My parents were in their 70s, and I didn't want to worry them. My friends, the ones I still had in Seattle after 11 years of a job that ate most of my time, knew I'd lost the job, but not the rest of it. I performed fine whenever I saw them. I was very good at performing fine. I'd had practice. It was a Tuesday in October. I was parked in a quiet street near the library, which was where I spent most evenings because the parking was free and the Wi-Fi reached the car if I positioned it right. It was raining. The specific Seattle rain that isn't dramatic but is completely relentless. The kind that gets into everything. I was working on the freelance project, trying to hit a deadline, when I noticed someone on the sidewalk about 30 meters ahead. An older man, 70s I guess, well dressed in the way that suggested this was not his usual situation, who had clearly slipped on the wet pavement and gone down hard. He was trying to get up and not managing it. There was nobody else on the street. I sat there for approximately 4 seconds. I want to be honest about those 4 seconds because I think pretending I leapt into action immediately is a lie. And lies aren't useful here. I was tired. I was cold. I had a deadline. I was a man living in his car who was not sure he was well and was performing okayness for everyone he knew, and the last thing I had energy for was someone else's problem. Then I got out of the car. I helped him up. He'd hurt his wrist in the fall. Not badly, but enough. His phone was cracked from the impact. I helped him to the dry overhang of the building we were in front of, called him a car on my phone because his wasn't working, and waited with him until it came. He tried to give me money. I told him I didn't need it, which was the most technically false thing I said that year, but I meant it in the way that mattered. He asked my name. I told him. He told me his Walter and shook my hand with his good one, and the car came, and he got in, and I went back to my car and finished my deadline and didn't think about it again. For 3 months, I didn't think about it again. By January, I was no longer living in my car. The medical situation had resolved. Benign, treatable, a relief so profound, I'd sat in the hospital parking lot for 20 minutes just breathing. The freelance work had picked up enough that I'd been able to rent a room in a shared house, which was humbling in the specific way that moving backward is humbling when you're almost 40, and which I was deeply grateful for anyway. I was rebuilding, slowly. The way you rebuild when the foundation is still a little unsteady, carefully, one thing at a time, not looking too far ahead because too far ahead was still frightening. On a Thursday morning in January, someone knocked on the door of the shared house. My housemate answered. She called up the stairs that there was someone asking for me by name. I came downstairs. It was Walter. He was standing in the doorway in a coat that probably cost more than my monthly rent, holding what appeared to be a folder of documents, looking at me with an expression I didn't know how to read. I said, "How did you find me?" He said, "It took a while." And then he said, "Can I come in? I have something I'd like to talk to you about." We sat at the kitchen table. My housemate made herself scarce with the tact of someone who understood that whatever this was, it wasn't for an audience. Walter put the folder on the table, but didn't open it. He looked at me for a moment, and then he said something that I want to get exactly right because I've replayed it many times. He said, "I've been in business for 40 years. I've met a lot of people. The thing I've learned is that you can tell a great deal about a person's character from what they do when nobody's watching, and there's nothing in it for them. You helped me when there was nothing in it for you, and you wouldn't take anything for it, and you went back to whatever you were doing as if it was the most normal thing in the world. I've been thinking about that for 3 months. I didn't know what to say. I said something like, it wasn't a big deal. He said, I know you were living in your car that night. I went very still. He said he'd had me found, not in a threatening way, but in the way that people with resources find things out when they want to understand something. He knew about the job, the apartment. He didn't know about the medical situation, and I didn't tell him then. He said he'd spent 3 months thinking about what to do with what he'd found out, and he landed on the only conclusion that made sense to him. Then he opened the folder. Walter was the founder of a mid-sized property development company that had been operating in the Pacific Northwest for 30 years. He was, I would later understand, quietly one of the more significant figures in Seattle's architectural landscape. Not a name that appeared in newspapers often, but a name that the right people knew. He was also, at 74, thinking seriously about what came next for the company. His 2 children had no interest in the business. His longtime partner had retired the previous year. He had a firm he'd built over 3 decades, and nobody he fully trusted to carry it forward with the values he'd built it on. The folder contained a job offer, not a regular job offer, a proposal. A structured role that would start as a senior architect and move over 2 to 3 years into a leadership position if things went the way Walter believed they would. The salary made me read the number twice. The equity component made me read it a 3rd time. I looked up from the folder and I said, Walter, you don't know me. You know I helped you off the pavement one time. He said, I know more than that. I've seen your work. You're not hard to find if you know what to look for. I know what you built at your last firm. I know how you handle losing it. He paused. I know what kind of person helps someone in the rain when they have $11 and nowhere to be. I asked him how he knew about the $11. He smiled for the first time. He said, I didn't. I guessed it was something like that. I sat with the folder for a long time. I told him I needed to think about it. He said, of course, and gave me his card and stood up and shook my hand again with the same good hand he'd used in October. At the door, he turned and said one more thing. He said, I'm not doing you a favor, Marcus. I'm making a business decision. I'd appreciate it if you thought about it in those terms. I thought about it for 4 days. Then I called him. I've been at Walter's firm for 3 years now. The transition to the leadership role happened faster than the 2 to 3 year timeline he'd outlined. Closer to 18 months, because the work went well and Walter is not a man who moves slowly when something is working. I designed a community center last year that opened in March. It's the best thing I've ever built. I stood at the opening and watched people walk through the doors and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not pride, exactly. More like alignment. Like the work and the person doing it were pointing in the same direction for the first time in years. Walter is semi-retired now. He comes in 2 days a week and drinks terrible coffee and has opinions about everything and is usually right, which is both useful and occasionally infuriating. We have lunch on Fridays. He has become, in the way that certain people become things without anyone deciding it, one of the most important people in my life. I told him about the medical situation eventually, about the 3 months of not knowing, about carrying it alone while living in a car, about the particular quality of that specific fear. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment, and then he said, I wish you'd had someone to tell. I said I did now. He didn't say anything to that. But he refilled my coffee, which from Walter is approximately the same thing. I think about the 4 seconds sometimes. The 4 seconds I sat in the car in the rain before I got out. I don't think I made a noble decision in those 4 seconds. I think I made a human one. The kind that doesn't feel like a decision at all. Just a thing your body does before your tired brain can talk it out of it. Get out of the car. Help the person. Go back to your deadline. I had no idea what I was doing in those 4 seconds. I had no idea what was coming 3 months later or 3 years later. I just got out of the car because someone was on the ground and it was raining. It turns out that's sometimes all it takes. If this story hit you somewhere, good. That feeling is worth paying attention to. And if you made it all the way to the end, thank you. Genuinely. Drop a like if this one meant something. Subscribe if you want more, and I'll see you in the next one.